Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. I'm Jason Haas. Welcome to the Instagram Live broadcast from Tablas Creek. I will be calling on Greg OByrne very shortly to join me. I'm super excited to have him. He is the longtime executive director of the Santa Fe Wine and Chili Fiesta, which is one of my absolute favorite wine festivals in the country every year. We are not physically going there, but this will be the first September that we haven't physically gone there in close to 20 years. So I'm interested in talking with him about the pivoting that festivals are doing around the country, and then talk about his long history with Tablas Creek and with my dad. So I'll be joining him be inviting him in a couple of minutes. But first, I want to, as I usually do, give you a little visual tour of what is going on. The big thing that we're doing right now is that we are harvesting. So give you a couple of pictures from the cellar. This is a picture of Grenache Blanc in the press. We've been picking Viognier last week, Grenache Blanc, and Vermentino this week. We have Marsanne coming. We have 2 different lots of Syrah sitting on our crush pad right now, with another one on its way later this afternoon. I'll give you a little picture of what that looks like once you get inside the cellar. You can see we are doing some cluster and berry sorting on the sorting table. It's getting destemmed, and then it's going into these open top macro bins in the middle of the cellar. So 2 weeks ago, when I showed pictures, this was wide open and empty. We hadn't started picking yet, and now we have. Our harvest chalkboard is getting quite a bit fuller. You can see a lot of the other things that we've brought in. I mean, a lot of Viognier, a lot of Syrah, starting to do Vermentino, Grenache Blanc. Marsanne's coming, Senso is coming. One of the results of the heat wave is that there's a lot of stuff which went from not quite ready to ready. A couple of pictures from the field of the harvesting. This is a Syrah block that we're picking today. This was taken, an hour and a half ago. A couple other shots. You'll notice the colors here are kind of remarkable. This is not a normal color sky for Paso Robles. It's kind of a grayish yellow. Took a picture over our solar panels, which are not doing much today. It's a result of the wildfire smoke that's coming from the big fire east of Fresno. That's really scary right now. I mean, almost 200,000 acres burned, and really no control, and a long way to go before we've got rain or anything which is likely to put it out. So our thoughts are with everybody who's affected by it. Our own impact is really just this crazy overcast yellow sky. You can see, again, this is from the middle of the vineyard. You can't see the sun. It's not clouds, but the smoke is thick enough overhead that it's totally obscured. So it's cool today. The air at the surface is fresh, which is great. But it's weird. We're hoping this doesn't last very long. We are supposed to get a sea breeze this afternoon, which will hopefully clear things up. A couple of last pictures from other parts of the vineyard. I checked on Muscardin. This is the little Muscardin block that we grafted in last year. You can see the graft at the bottom of that picture, and you can see the first Muscardin clusters ever in America. I got a close-up. It's really quite pretty. Anyway, again, first Muscardin in America. There's only about a dozen acres of this anywhere in the world, and we have about 5 rows that are producing this year. I don't know if we'll have enough to make even a barrel, but hopefully we will. It is worth noting that at the same time that the things like Syrah are coming in, there are still grapes that are not even fully red yet. This is a Mourvedre cluster just on the other side of the hill from that Muscardin. You can see some pink berries still, and that's totally normal. We're not quite 2 weeks into harvest, and harvest is normally a 2-month stretch. Okay, and then finally, one last picture. I mentioned that we had a heat wave last weekend. It was really hot. Got up to 110 here. That's super unusual, hot enough that we had to close our tasting room in the afternoon for a few days. There is remarkably little damage in the vineyard. This is what I was looking for. This is a Kuhnhaus cluster from a vine that wasn't super healthy to start with. You can see that there's some raisining. That was what I was walking around looking for. I had to look really hard to find a cluster that I could photograph. So overall, I feel like we came through that heat wave in really as good a shape as I could possibly have asked. Okay, I'm going to turn my photos off, and then I'm going to invite Greg to join me. There he is. So he's going to be joining from the Santa Fe Wine and Chili Fiesta Instagram account. Hey, how are you, Greg?
Jason. Good, Jason. Great to see you, man.
Yeah, I'm doing good. It looks weird here, kind of yellow and overcast, but the air is fresh at the surface. It's cool. The heat wave that we had broke, and honestly, I'll take it. It was a lot worse a few days ago.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you're getting the harvest in just at the right time. It's crazy. I mean, on my Instagram feed, all the friends in Oregon, the orange skies up in Willamette Valley right now. It's amazing. But I guess the smoke's staying away like it is for you, and it's just a crazy apocalyptic time right now, the whole West Coast.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at some of those satellite images that people are sharing of like where the fires are up and down, really from Washington, Oregon, California, I mean, there's fires everywhere, and the amount of
Right.
smoke that's getting poured into the atmosphere is staggering. So, like the pictures from San Francisco today are like it's wild, like deep orange pictures of
Yeah,
people crossing the Golden Gate Bridge.
yeah, it's just crazy. But it's the pictures and videos you just showed. It seems like it's actually quite calm there, and temperatures moderate, and it seems like good conditions for harvest. Huh?
Yeah, it is calm. We don't have a lot of wind. We're sort of in this little bit of this dead zone, and I mean that in the best possible way, between Northern California, where you get the Diablo winds that blow offshore, and then the Santa Ana winds, which come from the south and
Right.
blow offshore. And they're really dangerous because they're both dry, generally hot winds that fuel fire growth. And we're sort of in this middle point where the winds from the north don't quite make it to us, the winds from the south don't quite make it to us, and it is calm here. It's just sort of eerie. It's like you're in an eclipse.
Right. That's strange. I know you're on the downslope of Highway 46 as it goes down to Highway 1. How far are you from Highway 1 at the winery? Like 10,
We
12 miles?
are like 10 miles from the coast,
Right.
um, but there's a range of mountains in between us, so
Yeah.
even the something.
Interesting. Lost you, Jason. Oh, there you go. I can't hear you right now. Can you hear me? Yeah, I can hear you now. I just lost you for about half a minute there. I think I've got a
Okay,
good
great.
connection here, but let me know.
Okay. Yeah, I can never tell with one of these. I always look crystal clear to myself, but it's just the picture reflecting back in my camera. So if it's on my end,
Right.
I'm not the right person to ask. Um, okay, so I wanted to talk to you about a bunch of different stuff, but tell me first a little bit about the, or not, don't tell me, but share with the audience a little bit about the Santa Fe Wine and Chili Fiesta.
Well, thanks, Jason. I mean, it's been obviously a difficult year for everybody in all facets of work and life, and we didn't know if we were going to have an event this year, given the crowd control measures our governor, Rhône,
Yeah,
is following. And she's great. She's kind of been ahead of the curve, doing what Newsom's been doing, shutting down early. And we only recently went back to 25% indoor dining, which I see New York's about to announce end of September. But so we didn't know if we'd have any events this year, and finally, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, we decided to do a virtual event. and we leaned on a lot of. We just wanted to keep our audience engaged with wineries like yours, and it turns out we've got a great schedule. We put it together. We have about 24 great wineries supporting the event this year, including you, doing virtual wine tastings. So we're really excited about that, and I thank you for participating. It's, I think, kind of a unique opportunity to these virtual wine tastings for people to spend an hour with you tasting free wines from your winery that we're going to get to them. And I think it's just a very intimate way to do things. So I'm looking forward to it.
So 24 wineries, that's a pretty small fraction of the number of wineries and the number of events that would happen in a normal year at Wine and Chili.
Right. It's about 25%. Normally we have about 100 wineries. So this year about 25, 24, so about 25%. But it turns out the ones that can support us are people like you, small independent wineries who are willing to give us a couple cases of wine for the virtual tastings. And, so we have David Ramey, we have Beth from Spotswood, we've got your neighbor Mark Vernon over at Ridge. We got Bobby Stuckey doing a Wines of Friuli thing from Frasca. So it's a really exciting lineup. And, I know that we're going to taste some of your wines with your seminars Friday, September 25th, 4:30 Pacific time, 5:30 Mountain time. And, thanks for the support. We're going to have your Esprit de Blanc, your Esprit Rouge, and your Rosé for the guests. We've already sold some tickets to that. And kind of the idea is they get the free pack of your wines. They go home, they log into the Zoom private hour with you, and maybe have 4 or 5 friends home. So watching. So you might have, up to 40 to 50 people drinking with you and watching. And we're encouraging the guests to segue into the virtual live auction following the tastings, get some to-go food from our restaurants and support our restaurants. So it's working.
Cool. That's really cool. And so how long have you been running Santa Fe Wine and Chili?
As long as I've known your father, which is the early 90s. I know you're younger than me, Jason, but yeah, I met your father at Red Sage in Washington, D.C. In 89 or 1991 when Mark Kiffin and I opened it. And right about that same time, I started working with Santa Fe Wine and Chili Fiesta. Our first year was 91. So I've been the executive director since 1994. So this is my 27th rendition.
So, okay, so tell me about when you first met my dad. What was that like, and how did it happen?
It was really fascinating. I think I also met, is it your brother, Danny? Is that right?
Yeah, that's my half brother.
So, it's fun. I grew up in the Midwest, but then went to college at Berkeley and lived in the West Coast. So when I opened Red Sage in D.C., it was a whole new wine thing. I knew a lot about California wine, and I'd lived in Paris and knew a lot of French wine. But your father was one of the leading importers of French wine at the time through Vineyard Brands. And so a lot of those wines were on the East Coast only. I know your offices were near Washington, D.C., and so it was fascinating to see all the wines in your portfolio, the Vineyard Brands portfolio that your father had. And Danny was our salesman. I distinctly remember picking up the 89 Beaucastel Chef de Niftapop in 1991. It was just released, an incredible vintage, a wine you could open. I think I did open it, and it sat on the windowsill open for days and was still fresh as a daisy. Beautiful wine. And so, yeah, it was just a great time. Your father, the legacy he had with Vineyard Brands, I mean, the Henri Gouge, all the great Burgundies. So it's been a great story to follow. And from that friendship, I got to know you because your father, I know you're a small winery, you don't support a lot of wine events, but your father and now you have always supported our Santa Fe Wine and Chili Fiesta. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
I mean, honestly, it's one of the ones that I tell everybody, like if I have to cut down to just a couple of events a year, that's one of the ones that I'm always going to keep because I feel like you do such a good job of really making a winery that comes and participates feel welcome and feel valued and feel like you're thinking of how to get us in front of the right audience and a good audience and make sure that everybody has a good time and everybody gets something out of it.
Yeah, well, thank you. I know that, we're a restaurant-driven event, and that your wines show so well with food and restaurants, and you have a lot of great supporters here. Brian at Arroyo Vino loves your wines. He's got the restaurant and the wine shop, La Casa Sena. So many great relationships that you and your family have made with our restaurants, which raises the tide for all boats. I mean, our restaurants are happy to have those relationships, and thank you so much for making that happen.
So even before, because I moved out to California in 2002.
Right.
And so my first visit to Santa Fe for wine and chili was that fall, was September of '02. But my dad had come a couple of years before and done a grafting seminar where he
Yeah.
sent in like one of the grafting machines from our nursery, had it like disassembled and sent it in and then reassembled and did a grafting seminar. Like, whose
Yeah.
idea was that?
It was crazy. I think it was 1999. I called him and asked him if he'd come out and do a seminar with us. And it was his idea. He goes, yeah, I'll bring you the grafting machine that we use to graft all the vines from Chaponeta Papa Bocastel onto the rootstock here in Paso Robles. So it was fascinating. I think I actually might have it on tape. I'll see if I can get it on a DVD or burn it to you and send it to you. It's fascinating to watch together sometime. But yeah, so he brought the grafting machine in front of 75 people. They all tasted your wines, and he showed how to graft a vine
Yeah.
and how he did it. And I guess that the story is you guys brought those vines over in the mid 80s from Bocastel, and they had to sit in a nursery for 3 years, locked up in New York before they cleared customs or something.
Yeah, they were. So it was actually the stage after that. So we brought the vines in from Beaucastel. They went into quarantine in '89, and then they came out of quarantine in '92. But you're only allowed to bring in 6 cuttings of each type through this quarantine program. And so when those come out, they show up. They're like they're growing vines, but their
Yeah,
roots have to be washed of all soil because you can't bring soil into California.
yeah,
And you have these 6 vines that you then have to pot up and then turn into the thousands that you need to plant your vineyard. And so we spent 2 years just propagating grapevines in our own nursery that we built on site. I'm pointing that way because that's the way it is from where I'm sitting.
right.
Um, but then before you plant them, in order to have them be planted safely in most of the world, you have to graft them onto rootstocks that are resistant to phylloxera. So you can't just take your Syrah vine or your Viognier vine and put it in the ground because it doesn't have any resistance to this North American pest. And so you have to graft it onto a grapevine, a wild North American grapevine that evolved along with phylloxera and has immunity to it. So we had to learn this whole second business of not just like growing the grapes and making wine, but turning grapes into more grapes, turning vines into more vines, kind of propagating and grafting. And we still take people down to the little grafting area that we keep. It's really just a demonstration area at this point, but we take people down there, and people who've been in the business for 20 years are like, I've never seen this. This is totally fascinating.
Right.
So I know that when I go to Santa Fe, I still, every year, every time that I go, I still talk to somebody who says, oh, I was at that seminar that your dad did where he grafted a grapevine.
Right.
Uh,
I imagine in '99 his mind was full of that because that's what you've been doing for 5 years there at Paso Robles. It's crazy. So when was the first? I know that when the vines were young, you would call it Esprit de Beaucastel. When was the first vintage of, as the vines got older, that you called it Esprit de Tablas? Was it?
It was. We switched that between 2010 and 2011.
Okay.
So 2010 was the last vintage of the Esprit de Beaucastel. 2011 was the first of the Esprit de Tablas, and we did it with the red and the white, the same vintage. So between 10 and 11, and it was really, for us, it was kind of our thought that it was time for us to sort of step out from under Beaucastel's wing a little bit, and
Right,
this was
sure.
something that we had talked about with the pairings at the very beginning when we put the Beaucastel name on the label in 2000. Their comment was, okay, this is going to be a really important thing to get Tablas Creek established, but there will be a point where you won't need this anymore, and it'll be equally important that you then move on from that and have Beaucastel go back to being a part of your history, a part of your story, rather than a part of your brand. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you're tasting the very first one ever.
In 2000. Well, what a great partnership with the Perrin family, and respect to them to tell you to put your own name on it after the vines got a little older. I love the trajectory. I know that as a kid you spent time at Beaucastel. How's the harvest there? Are they still waiting to pick, or I know
They are almost exactly on the same schedule that we are, which is unusual. Often we're a little later than they are. Typically they're starting the end of like the 3rd or 4th week of August, and we're not starting until the very end of August, the very beginning of September. And then they usually take about 6 weeks from beginning to end. So they're largely done by the beginning of October.
Right.
Um, we're often just kind of lingering until the end of October. And that's just because by the time you get to October here, the days are still going to get up into the 80s, but the nights are often in the 30s. I mean, it's really, the nights are so cold by the time you get to that late in the growing season that the vines only have a few hours each day where they really photosynthesize with any particular power. So often you don't get up above that 70-degree kind of barrier where they photosynthesize well until say 11 in the morning, and then by the time you get to 4 in the afternoon, it's cool again. So the tail end of harvest to get those last things in usually takes a little longer here, but it's always the specifics are always determined by weather, and this is a year where we just ended up on a very similar time frame. So I talked to Francois Perrin last week, and he was describing, yeah, we're mostly done with Viognier. We're starting with Syrah. It's like, hey, so are we.
Yeah.
But yeah, I spent a couple summers there, 3 summers there, one in high school, one in college, and then one between college and grad school, where like I thought I was there learning the language, but really I was being indoctrinated into the next generation of the family business.
Well, lucky for us. So I saw you were picking Syrah today in the pictures you showed earlier. Is it early for you to be picking Syrah? I know it's about the same time.
No, it's normal. We normally figure that Syrah is going to start to come in at the beginning of September, and we won't get our last Syrah lots probably for another 2 weeks, but it's the earliest of the reds. So we'll usually start. I mean, we get a couple of whites before the Syrah gets going. Usually Viognier and Grenache Blanc will start, Vermentino. But then Syrah comes pretty quick, and then kind of sequences through. And next, we're going to expect to see a little bit of Grenache, or first we'll see some Senso, then a little bit of Grenache. Grenache is going to stretch over a long period because it always does. We'll get our first Grenache maybe in 10 days, but we're not going to get our last Grenache until October. And then we'll get to Cunoise, and then Mourvedre always brings up the rear.
So you have like 8 weeks in front of you picking up.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, let me get wine and chili behind me, and let's get the smoke and fires out of the West Coast. I'll bring my bike. I'll see you there in October.
Hey, we will happily accept the help.
I'd love it. I picked at Montebello in 2015, so it's been a while since I've gotten into the vines and picks, but I really love it. It's a great experience. I'd love to do it with you someday.
It would be an honor.
Yeah.
So how did you get into wine in the first place? I know you started at least my first awareness of you was at Red Sage in DC, right. But that can't have been your introduction to wine.
Yeah, it's interesting. Thank you. A good question. I appreciate it. I grew up in the Midwest, Irish Catholic family. We moved to the Bay Area in the mid-'70s, and I finished high school in East Bay, and then went to school at Berkeley. But while finishing high school in the mid to late '70s, we used to go up to Napa Valley. We'd go to Joseph Phelps. It's fascinating to think it's only 40 some years ago, but 90% of Napa was white grapes. Phelps was known for their Johannesburg Riesling, which we used to love to buy by the bottle. We'd put it in our Boda bag and go to Grateful Dead concerts at Winterland in San Francisco. So it was just, Phelps was always a dear winery to me. I met Beth in Spotswood in the early 80s. But later in 89, I guess in 86, I moved to France. I got a degree at UC Berkeley in 82 in computer science. And I was living and working in France doing software engineering. And France, in particular, Paris, is known for their 3-hour lunches, which I really enjoyed. So I had already initiated myself with California wine, but got to know some French wine while living in Paris. Came back to San Francisco, was continuing in another computer job, living in North Beach in 87, 88. But then my favorite cafe, Mario's Bohemian in North Beach, the owner, Paul Crismani, offered me a bartending job, and I kind of switched careers and got into the food and restaurant business in North Beach in San Francisco, and then moved here shortly thereafter to Santa Fe and started working for Mark Miller at Kylie Cafe.
Cool. And what was your introduction into Beaucastel? I mean, that 89 was certainly that's an iconic vintage. That was the wine that they kind of made their reputation. That was the wine where they were the Wine Spectator Wine of the Year. And
right. I think that was my initiation. I really loved it when I opened DC. We were really celebrating Mark Miller when we opened Red Sage with Mark Kiffin from the Compound. We're celebrating Foods of the Americas, and Mark was Miller was always an advocate of Rhône varietals going so well with quail and beef and corn, beans, squash, and chilies. He thought wines of this nature were much more suited for foods like that. So we were open to that, and that '89 Beaucastel just was like a really eye opener for me. And I started buying the wine by every vintage. And I think Sandy Day back in the day, Vineyard Brands, worked for your father. You guys, they used to sell the Coudelet de Beaucastel, which I don't know if it was the baby Beaucastel, but that was like kind of a go-to house wine, that was just like
Yeah.
the younger vines. And I think that wine has transformed into something else now. I'm not sure.
No, it still is what it is. It's basically from the Beaucastel estate. It straddles the line that separates Châteauneuf-du-Pape and Côte-du-Rhône.
Right.
And that was really a function of Jacques Perrin, who was on the committee. I think he actually chaired the committee to draw the Châteauneuf-du-Pape appellation boundary.
Right.
And he felt it was really important to show that he wasn't favoring himself and drawing the line around his property, that he was saying, okay, this is like, we have to make hard choices. I feel like the line should be here. And it follows the Route Nationale that goes through the south of France. That's the boundary line. It's a highway, but but about a third of the Beaucastel estate is on the wrong side, on the Côte-du-Rhône side of that boundary line. And so that's what Coudelet is. It's estate Beaucastel, but it's Côte-du-Rhône, not Châteauneuf-du-Pape.
Right. So yeah, I think, for me, it was really Mark Miller working for him all those years. He turned me on to Rhône varietals. And so we've just been following the trajectory of your family's partnership with the Pairings and really enjoying it. I think it goes well with our cuisine here. Hatch green chilies are in season right now. It's just, your wines, they're not a lot of new oak, not a lot of extraction. They have a lot of flavor, good acidity. So to me, they just are very much food wines, and they seem to go well with sometimes our spicy cuisine here in New Mexico. Yep. Yeah, just really enjoy them.
Cool. Okay. Well, you've given a couple of highlights as to some of the things, like some of the things that are coming up in this year's Wine and Chili. Can you give a couple of others? What else? What other things are you excited about for people to check out?
We do have about 24, 25 restaurant partners hosting winery lunches and winery dinners this year. Since the Wine and Chili isn't doing any social gatherings for daytime events like the Rosé All Day event we participated in last year, we're encouraging our restaurants to host winery-themed lunches so that we have a good schedule of lunches and dinners with wines at those events. I mean, people can't really travel, so there's those. But there's also on Friday night, we're going to do our regular live auction, which you supported last year as our Winery of the Year. So we'll have about 30 or so lots on a virtual live auction. We have the same auctioneer, Greg Quiroga. He'll be in the studio in San Francisco. You've given us a set of magnums, old and young, for the live auction. So, we're encouraging people to do like virtual wine tastings with people like you from 5:30 to 6:30 on Friday, then segue right into the live auction. So that's happening. Champagne Palmer is a sponsor this year. They're our Champagne of the Year, and for each tasting kit, like with your tasting kit, there's 3 Tablas Creek bottles. We're also giving everybody a bottle of Champagne Palmer, so they can get their friends together at home, have a bottle of champagne to start, get on the session with you, taste your 3 wines, and enough wine to hang out for the rest of the night and have dinner. I've got friends who are doing they bought your kit here in Santa Fe, and they're calling their friends in Pittsburgh. Hey, get that Tablas Creek kit, and we'll watch together from their separate living rooms. So it's like watch parties, and so I think it's fun, yeah, and really honored to have you hosting one. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think our auction lot's going to be little verticals of the Esprit Red and White Magnums, right? It's the three vintages of Magnums of Esprit Red and 3 vintages of Magnums of Esprit White. So
right.
That should be fun.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, please. Cool. So is there a winery of the year this year? I know we were honored to be the winery of the year last year.
We were going to have one, but decided not to. It's actually our 30th event too, and we're kind of like, well, let's wait to celebrate our 30th anniversary next year in person and all that. So, but I think that rather than one winery of the year, we have 24 wineries of the year. If I look at the lineup, including you and Spotswood and Rainey and Ridge and it's just everyone who's been a winery of the year is like helping out this year. So it's like kind of like a group effort, 24 wineries of the year.
Santa Fe Wine and Chili's greatest hits.
Virtually the best event ever.
Cool. Well, I I'm excited to be a part, even in this small way, of the event this year. I'm really happy. I saw somebody comment as we were doing that they were happy that you didn't cancel the event, that you instead um, put in the work to turn it into a virtual experience that people can still be a part of. I think that's what we're all kind of looking at for. I mean, for these last 6 months, and likely for at least another 6 months. I think we're going to be looking at how to keep as much as we can of the things that we value without putting ourselves and our people and our guests in danger. So kudos to doing the heavy lifting for turning a challenge into a different sort of an opportunity for people.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, as you know, wine is what binds us together, and we love doing it in person at the table, but this year we'll bind together through Zoom. We have, I think I already mentioned to you, Jason, that, I was talking to 6 different master sommeliers this morning. They're going to split the schedule of 24 virtual tastings over the 4 days, and each act as a moderator, introduce somebody. You and I talked about maybe Joe Spellman, your friend over at Justin, and introducing you and moderating yours. So yeah, I was talking to Lindsay Geddes from Charlie Palmer's restaurant in Vegas. She's one of our guest sommeliers this year too, and she's really looking forward to getting back to talking about wine with people, even though it's going to be through Zoom. I mean, there's so much about this we miss with one another, and so hopefully we can still. And you and I mean, it's great to see your face and talk today. It's great to stay connected. I mean, last time I saw you, I was so busy with wine and chili, and I think I saw you at the winery. Was it 2 years ago when Highway 1 was burned, and I had to come on my bike over the mountain? Came in backside, and you greeted me, and we had a great tasting there, and I can't wait to do that again.
Yep. So what's the best way for people to find out more about wine and chilies?
Thanks. Santa Fe Wine and Chili.org is our website. The virtual wine tastings are posted there, the lunches and the dinners. You can register to bid on the live auction, which you can start viewing the lots right now. But remember, Santa Fe Wine and Chili.org. We spelled chili with the E here. Chile. So just go to the website and pick your tastings. Join you or whoever for a Friday night tasting. It's all right there at the website.
Cool. Yeah, everybody, if you have not yet had the chance to experience Santa Fe Wine and Chili, it is one of the great wine festivals in the country every year, and a huge piece of that is Greg's vision and his leadership. So. Yes, definitely go and experience the virtual one this year, but also make a point of setting aside that weekend in late September to go when you can, because it's a treat. And the participation of the restaurants, the amazing restaurants in Santa Fe, is remarkable. I do several festivals a year in a normal year around the country, and there is no other festival that has the buy-in that the Santa Fe Wine and Chili does from really the full collection of the restaurant community there. So awesome. Good luck this year, Greg. I'm sure we'll be talking over email between now and the event a couple times. But meanwhile, thanks for taking a half hour out of your Wednesday to talk to me.
Say hi to Chelsea and Neil and Darren and the whole Tablas team, and thank you so much. Cheers.
You're welcome. Cool.
Right.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Greg.
Bye-bye.
And thank you everybody for joining today. I'll be on again in we're doing sort of an every other week format. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll have Greg Duty, who is the president of Vineyard Brands, on to talk about what things look like in the import world and internationally as we move out of the summer into the fall season. So thanks for joining me. Our tasting room is back open, which we're excited about. The weather looks weird, but it's supposed to be really nice, moderate this week and this weekend. So hope to see you out here. And thanks again for joining me.